The Taybas Daf Gimel, and the continuation we actually learned before. We learned before, and we had this Gemara Mishnah before, and that is, if somebody can change his mind, if somebody can change it, we already had a thing about if somebody can change his mind once he gives to a shliach a get, and he says, give this to my wife, or give this to an Eved. We had whether it's a chus for them or a chay for them. So if a wife, everyone agrees it's a chay, and you can always change your mind. Regarding a chus. However, the Mishnah says, what happens if you get to give this get to my wife? Give this to my Eved. He didn't give it directly to the shliach. He gave it to somebody that give it to a shliach. The mace, and then he died. You cannot give it now. Why? Because as far as you didn't give it to the shliach yet, you gave it to the person. Go give it to an agent to pass it on, because the wife is no longer his wife, and the Eved no longer belongs to him. Belongs now to the heirs, to the Yarshim. So he has no right to set them free. He can no longer set them free after he died. What happens? He says, he says, give this money to somebody, and then he died before the money was given over. You have to give it lachamis. Now we'll have a machlekes the Gemara in the next block. If mitzvah lekayim divrei hames. So we're now going to assume in the Gemara coming forward that even if you don't follow that there's a mitzvah to listen to the instructions of somebody who died, still you have to abide by what he said. Why? So here we're going to have a different opinion. But who? You know when you have to carry out the instructions of this mace, that whatever it is the item he wants to give to that person is already bundled up and sitting somewhere. So you know exactly where it is, and he spoke of a specific item. I want you to pass it on to that person. You have to give it to that person. Says the Gemara, let's analyze this. There's two possible cases. Either the guy is dying, knows as a shchimena, and by a shchimena we have a rule. We don't want to upset the person, not one iota. So by a shchimena we say, his instructions as if they're written and recorded in a contract. And then we have a called a matnas body. He's a healthy person, and suddenly he was struck by lightning or something, and he died. Now, matnas body, if he didn't actually write it down, everything else, then you don't carry out instructions. Someone asks, what's going on here? He labor body. If we're talking about a healthy person, and he said, I want you to give that to somebody when he died, why should you do it? There was no kinyan yet transacted with that other person. Mitzvah the kind of hames. We're following according to the opinion that says there's no mitzvah to the kind of hames. In other words, even though he gave it as a body, if he died straight away, it becomes in the gedder of mitzvah kind of mess. The Rishonim say, and therefore, if you follow that opinion, then you would have to abide by it. But over here, since we're following the opinion that there's no mitzvah kind of mess, okay. What you have to carry as instructions. So why is it necessary to be bundled up in a corner? And if it's not bundled up, you have to carry out instructions. Even if it's not bundled up, the words of a person who's dying in a death throes, whatever he says, is as if it's written and recorded. Normally, if a person says kisvu, is it right? You're right to stop, but it doesn't give you the right to pass it on. By saying, but a shchibra says, right, you're right, and you give it over as well. Says the Gemara, we're talking about a healthy person. Now we're going to introduce now a new novel concept of kinyan. What's the name of Rav? Monali, and that's how we know in the previous Gemara Rav Huna was not sitting from Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rav Huna was a student of Rav. In fact, he was even a student of Rabbi a little bit. If a guy says to him, I owe you, you owe me $100. Instead of paying it back to me, I want you to pay to that person as a gift, whatever. All three of us are standing here. The borrower is there, the lender is there, and the beneficiary that I want to give it to. It's called Maimet Shlushton. If all three are there, Kana, that person is Kana. So kinyan called Maimet Shlushton. Now, Tosis and other Shem always ask, what do you need Maimet Shlushton for? We learned before that if it's a schus, as soon as you give it to the person, it's what? The other person is zeicha. What do you need the other person here for? Why do we need the beneficiary here? Just say to the leiva, I want you to be zeicha that money that you owe me on behalf of that person. The person automatically gets paid. What's the mile of ma'im shlosh novus chus? So Tejik gives a few differences. One difference is, first of all, ma'im shlosh will see that there's a machlekes if it only applies to pekadon or applies even by milk and other things. But Tejik, one thing is, the Tejik concludes that ma'im shlosh, the item has to first of all be there, it has to be present, And then place goes further. You actually have to give it to the person right now. He says, like the money has to be standing in the labor's hand, and he's about to give it to the Malva, and they say, okay, my Mishloshon, I want this, I want you to give it to the other person because everything is there for my Mishloshon. I can do that. Schus, it doesn't have to be here at all. If I say, see that mitzvah over there on the ground, pick it up and be zoich on behalf of that other person. That other person's kind of, but my Mishloshon wouldn't work because I didn't. First of all, there's no dasach. I'm not giving him the pick up mefker, but even let's say in theory, I'm not giving anything to him. I didn't give him that mitzvah. He picked up the mitzvah, so I cannot do my mishloshim. That's what he works. My mishloshim works only if the thing is here. But so why do you need my mishloshim for? My mishloshim, the mile of my mishloshim is I can do it even against the will of the borrower. The borrower refuses to give it to that. I hate that person. I don't want to give it to him. So if it's not schus, you can't force him to be zeiche. But my mishloshim I could. Okay, so this is called Maimed Shloshim. And it's all Matna's body and Maimed Shloshim. That's why we need to think item right here. So the Gemara, I asked the question, why have we bundled up? There's another thing that I've said. I've said, I want you to give $100 to that person for my assets. If he said he clearly specifies the money, the $100 sitting in my top drawer, then nice, you give it. If he says, stop, I want you to give $800, ain't nice. Why? How do you know which $100? Maybe it's $100 he had buried somewhere that no one even knows exists. Maybe the money is buried somewhere. The Allah is, the Gemara says, even though that Papa said that if a person's, even if he says, stop, $100, we'll take $100 on top drawer, even though he didn't specify where. We're not going to assume there's some money hidden somewhere. He meant that money there. That's a bit far-fetched. Anyway, that Papa, my time, I'm going to read. Why did the Papa just say, my mishloshim? The Papa says, Ki Amar Rav Leishna ben Milishna bekad. Rav holds, Rav says that my mishloshim works even by a loan where the money is not in existence. Where the money is not in existence, my mishloshim works. And therefore, if my mishloshim works, why do you have to be bundled up over here? Why do you have to have the money in the Keren Zovis and bundled up? Even by halva, where the money is sitting by the leiv and the leiv had every right to spend it, and therefore that's what my mishloshim is. So therefore, you don't need it. If it would be my mishloshim, you wouldn't need it piled up in the Keren Zovis. That's a pop. Razvid, however, holds that it only applies to because it only applies if it's here, not if the money is not here. My mishloshim has to be right here. Razvid, my time alama papa. Why does a vidla not papa? Now the truth of the matter is the Gemara just said the halacha is not like a papa. But so what? But maybe Rab holds that, even though that's not the halacha. You know why the Mishnah is not talking about shchimra according to Zvid? It says give this get to my wife. The first part of the Mishnah. They give this star shikha to my Evid. But May says if he died, don't give it out to him, which means, but time only because he died. If he would still been alive and he says, give this get, give this shikha to my Evid. Time the amatnu, and he said the word tnu. That's why you give. He wouldn't have said give it. He just said here. This is the get for my wife. This is the star shikha me'evid. If you wouldn't have said the word tnu, give it. You wouldn't. But it's just shivana. Why not? He knows it was shivana. I forgot nice. By shivana, we know the law is even if he doesn't spell out because he's not thinking straight. If he even doesn't spell out, if he gave you a get, obvious, what does he want? He wants to give her a get to avoid her being a yavama. So therefore, you should have given. Why does the Mishnah say dafka tenu? So obviously, we're not talking about shchivana. How do I know that if a shchivana says, "Here's a get for my wife," you have to give it straight away without even spelling out give it? Which is not we learned. What he's showing here, first they said, somebody's being taken to the gallows or somebody's being taken to execute it. But Amar, he screams out, "Kiss will get leishti, rather get to my wife," even though he didn't say give it to her. And do quickly before they kill me, so that my wife doesn't have to become a yavama. They write it straight away. They yitnu and they give it. In other words, we are going to surmise. That's what he meant to say, even though he wasn't thinking straight. Later on, they had another layer. Somebody's traveling overseas. In those days, it was always treacherous the waters and dangerous, and a lot of times we had the whole Yavamis. People didn't come back. So if he said, "Write a get for my wife," it means write and give it, and she's divorced. Rab Shimon Shazuri adds another layer. No second. He says here, no good traveling overseas, you're going to kill. He says that a shchivara says, write a get for my wife, it means give. So therefore, our Mishnah says tenu give. Why does it spell out tenu? Obviously, we're not talking about a shchivra. So that's why he doesn't get a papa that I'm talking about shchivra. I was talking about a normal case bori, and that's why you need a setup over there, because I hold my mishlosh is only limited to a case where you can actually see it's visible only by percut. Who told you that Mishnah of Shimon Shizuri? You decide the author of Mishnah of Shimon Shizuri that as soon as you say kisvu, it's good enough, and then you have a kasha. Maybe it's the first two layers, the first dinim, not the Shimon Shizuri, who say only if a guy is dying, he's getting killed, or he's so. But that was chivra. So that's what a papa differ argues. Rabbi Zvidin says he could be talking about a shchivra, because we're not following up Shimon Shizuri. He says that shchivra says right, you automatically give. So let's analyze. If he said $100 in my hand, my mishloshem, Rav Huna said in the name of Rav, if there's $100, you owe me $100. I want you to give it to that person, my mishloshem. So just like the papa was saying, it applies not only by pekat, no by Hira. Kona. Omar Rabba says Rabba. Mistabra milsa the pekat. It makes sense. In logic, if you want to apply a logic, it makes sense by Pekadin. Why? Because by Pekadin, wherever it is, the master still it still belongs to the master. We had the chametz and all these things. That if I have a Pekadin in your house, it's still I'm in control. It's my thing there. So therefore, I can say, you know what, instead of move it from you to the other person. But I've been by milva. Once I lend the money to the borrower, I can't tell the borrower how to spend it. It's the borrower's money. Milva that's on it. It's no longer mine. Makadosh b'milva is not mekadesh. If you give it to a woman, say you mekadosh that money, no, because the money's gone. There's nothing there. So therefore, how can I say let's shift that money from you to somebody else? That's not what I thought. But v'lekim, I can swear at Rav. Rav said that Rav said afilu b'milva. That what that Rav takhold even by halva, you can transfer the money. And the question is how. You owe me money. Shimon owes Reuben money, and somehow another Reuben says, Shimon, the money you owe me, I want now belong to Levi, and it belongs to Levi. Why? On what basis? No, Shimon says I owe money. No, I owe. Yeah, but I owe him. So the Shimon passes on. Yeah, I owe nothing to Levi. I want to give him money. I want him a present. How? We'll explain in a minute. We'll explain in a minute. There is no explanation. We'll soon see. Even now, Shimon said the same thing. To know the money you owe me, give to that person. The time am I? Why? How? How does the money get transferred? Where's the kinyan? What's going on here? You know what? The only kinyan that ever happened here was when I lent the money originally. Reuben lent the money to Shimon. We're going to go back in time and say it's as if at the time when I lent you the money, Shimon, I meant to say was, and then you'll give it to whoever I asked you to give it to. So we go back in time as if it happened at the time that I lent you the money, even though I didn't bring it up at all too much later. It's as if it happened then. The bar was saying, I'll pay back to you or to anybody that you want me to pay back. So it all happened. So let's say in what do you call it? In Tufshin Pay, we made the loan, and Tufshin Pay Gimel, you have to pay me back. It's as if in Tufshin Pay, this is what we made up. Then you okay. All the rest of it comes out interesting halacha then, if that's the basis. What happened if somebody was born in Tufshin Pay Aleph? So you can't say, so he couldn't have been included in this arrangement because the arrangement was that, at the time of the money, whatever you tell me later, it's as if I owe the money to that person right now, but this person wasn't born in Tufshin Pay. So you start making these dinner now. Let's look at the birth certificate. Let's see if that person was around then. What if it's a 10-year loan, a 20-year loan? We can't have dinim that are so complex. That in Nachman, I maybe other makna the dava shleiba. We had a whole argument with other makna dava shleiba. So we're going to say right now, yes, even though other makna dava, even though you can arrange a sale about something like fruits of a tree. The fruits haven't grown yet, but I can deal with you. Like Meir says, the fruits of a tree will haven't been more mafkin, but it has to be to somebody that exists. Since this child did not exist at the time, can't be that Shimon committed himself to pay in Tufshin Pay to someone that didn't exist in Tufshin Pay. So you can have different strange rules. The Afilu Meidam who says, you can sell, let's say, fruits of a tree that the fruits aren't grown yet. You have these to somebody that exists. So therefore, there's something, something tangible part of this kinyan still there. But to somebody that doesn't exist, no. Interesting. Rameir, how do we know Rameir holds the makna dova shleiba? So the Mishnah in Kedusha will have a person says to a woman, after I become free, I'm an Eved, after I become free, you'll be engaged to me. And and so on and so forth. So even though if right now it's not happened yet, I'm a goy or I'm an Eved, still it's a dova shleiba. It's a lid because the guy is not a get yet. The guy is not a free yet. So they answer, but the person is still here. So even though we say a Gershon is a guy got to know them, and in some respect we say the mamish and mitzi is like something brand new, but in some respect we say the fact that there's a physical person here who fell in love with this woman, so therefore you cannot say that's called a lid davar shalei baloilam, because the emotions are there, are real, from her perspective for sure. So therefore it's as if lid davar. Anyway, Ela Rashi.
To the third party, would that resolve this issue?
But I want him to give it to that person. So what? Someone doesn't meet him. So all that means is when he gives me the money, I give it to that person.
The problem that the third party can't acquire.
How do you bind him? No, how do you bind him? He doesn't want to give to that person.
Bound to give back.
Yeah, but I hate that person. I don't want to see him. I don't want to talk to him. So I'll give it to you. You do the money whatever you want. And we're saying no. My mishloshon is I'm out of the picture. You now owe the money to that person. So we're asking how? How did you shift that obligation from me to that person? Yeah. So we're saying it's as if it happened. As if it's like tonight happened b'shas halva. So we're saying, but that doesn't make sense. So the person was born afterwards. He's not a part of it. So Gemara comes with a new reason. It's not retrospective. It's right now. How is it right now? El Rabashi. The loiva thinks to himself, this lender here lent me the money 3 years ago, and it's due pretty much soon. I don't have the chutzpah to say I want another year or 2 years. Give me a long enough time. But it's a new lender, and it costs the guy nothing. It's a new lender. Maybe I can convince the new lender to give me an extension of time. So I'm happy to move from A to B because I'm getting some benefit from it. And that satisfaction that the loiva is getting, he's getting something right now. Hano. And that hano, in exchange of that hano, which means he got something, I'm paying back. I'm going to pay that other person. Exactly. Not it wasn't spoken about. It's just a thought that this person has, and he's confident that he can do it. So by who hano, that benefit to come that it changes by milvi yishon or milvi chadasha, that now is considered a new loan. He decided, you know what, I'm going to commit myself. So it's not retrospective. It's now. Right now, I'm transferring the obligation to the other person. Okay. What about this new lender is known for the reputation that they're difficult people to talk to, they're difficult people to work with, and they don't negotiate. If it's something is due, they bought a loan contract, you got to pay in time, otherwise they're going to chase after you and whatever. So what happens then? You can start telling me, depends who that third party is. If he's a nice guy, not a nice guy, how's it work? So Huna, the son of Namechem, said Rashi, and he had to go to this. What about yes, Rashi when he came up with this answer. This family of Bala Yoshev, the kafsi that they are no the shoglau that they tie you up and they force you to pay straight away. You can tell me in this case the bar. I'd rather do my older lender than this new guy. Yeah, maybe it depends who that other party is. It comes out you have different rules for different people, and we don't like to have different rules for different people. We want our rules to be universal. Ella Mazut concludes. Hani klas mili, the following 3 dinim shavinu rabbanu. They're only dinim of the rabbis, but they treat it kehilchasa b'loy taima, as if there is no logic to it. As if there's no logic to it. No, there is a logic to it, but the logic is not strong enough to come up with this halacha. But there is a little bit of sound logic to it. For example, Chadaha, the law of my mishloshim. The basis for it is instead of me collecting the money and then giving to the other person, save time and save tircha, you just give it straight to the other person. So there's a logic to it, but that's not strong enough to create a halacha that somehow or another the commitment that you have to me should transfer to the other person. That's hilchasa b'loy taima. The halacha part of it, the transference, based on what? But there's a logic to it. The next one is hakoisiv kol nechasa lishta. If a guy writes over, like everyone does today, that on the will, all my assets, if I predecease her, should go to my wife. If this man predeceases his wife, should go to my wife. If someone gives all the chassan to his wife, we don't believe for a minute that a person will refuse to give the chassan to his children. So why did he give it all to his wife? He did it so the kid should respect her, take care of her, and treat her right, because at the moment she holds the strings, and she's only like an overseer, like executive of the state. That's what she is, and eventually it'll all pass on to the children. So again, so that's the logic behind it. But what right do you have to? The fact is, he gave it to her. He wrote a contract, whatever it is. He made a kinyan. He gave it all to her. But the logic, there's a logic, but the halacha is still without a time. How do you usurp what he undermine what he did? So that's a halacha without a time. And the third one is the third one, the oldest son. He builds a house for his oldest son, and they get, in those days the chuppah used to be in the house, the Beis Chasanim. And the oldest son, he gave a house, or even lived in the house, and he moved out of the house and he gave it to the son. If the house automatically belongs to the son, no kinyan, no chazaka, no shtar. If they got married in the house and he gave the house so he can live, it's the son. Because they need a place to live. The logic is very simple. They need a place to live. And it's the first son and everything else. But nevertheless, how did it become his? Where's the kinyan? That's the belay time. The halacha part of it. Why you came up with this idea, we understand. But the halacha part of it, how it actually works, there's no basis for it, but we just did it because for these reasons. That's it.
In this case, you can just give him a shtar matana for the help.
But how's that help? So it first has to come to me, and then he goes to him. This person, what do you think? I'm going to give it. So the borrower will give it to the lender, and the lender will then give it to that person. He gave him a shtar matana, but the borrower won't give it. Won't give it. Can you, the third party, go to the borrower and force the borrower to give him the money? If the lender gave a shtar matana, the borrower said, "Go to the lender. What do you want from me? I didn't give you a shtar matana. I owe this person money. Why should I give it to you?" But Shemaim Shloshen, yes, as Taisa says, even Bal Karchach. This is called this Kinyan Maim Shloshen. Very interesting. Okay, well.